Hello and welcome to part 3 of this Tumbler build process. Wanted to kick this one off by showing you a little bit of the progress that is made, which hasn't been much because I'm keeping most of it for the video series. But if you recall last time where we left off, I got these wheels attached. I still need to connect it back here. I'm using this coffee creamer spout as a base for the turbine engine here, right? So it'll sit in like that. I eat a lot of eggs, and I had this egg carton, and I was like, I was getting ready to recycle it, and I thought, oh, you know what? Typically we get the paper cartons, right? But the store was out of them, so we ended up with this, and the plastic was like, oh, that I can use this for the windows and something, right? I always can't hold on to this kind of stuff for these reasons. So I thought, oh, I could maybe use these for the windows in the Batmobile, and the Tumbler. And then I was like, well, hold up a second. And I looked at this bottom piece, and I was like, you know what that looks like? So I cut one out, and it fits in here pretty well. And this is, I mean, like a pretty perfect turbine jet engine thing. It's got this kind of ribbing to it, which I was going to have to approximate by cutting pieces of styrene and layering them on something. So, I mean, this is pretty much good to go, and it sits fairly flush with this thing, which is, you know, another piece that's fairly accurate to the way the back of the Tumbler looks, at least as far as I can get using, you know, plastic cleaning supply bottles. So the plan is to take this, attach it to the back here, you know, glue this to the inside. Once this is painted, it's going to be all uniform and look like I want it to. So pretty stoked about that. That's a great development because it means less cutting of random little plastic pieces that I have to do. And I'm you know, using some discarded stuff to make something cool out of it. So I'll have to cut this centerpiece out, and then I may have to put some kind of cup in here, you know, like paint a little, like ramekin, like the kind you get, you know, to dip sauce in or something. Paint it black and stick it in here with the opening up so that it's still hollow looking, but is dark enough to where like you don't see through it into the interior of the Tumbler itself. So yeah, but anyway, I wanted to kick this off by showing that. Reason for this overhead camera angle is because what I'm going to be doing next is cutting the styrene. So this is a styrene sheet. It's a pretty dense kind of plastic sheet. Very similar to, like, you know, when you get bread and it's got that little tab on there to hold the bread shut. It's like a thicker version of that. So, you know, basically just a polystyrene plastic sheet. This is going to be the fins here. The spoilers, I guess. And then I also want to cut a piece to put over this to hide the seam and to hide these screw holes. So the way I'm going to do that is just take regular tracing paper, stick it over the top, trace the piece, and then usually what I do is I rub a bunch of graphite from the pencil onto one side, then I put that side down on the styrene and I redraw over it. And when you do that, it transfers that graphite onto the sheet so you can actually see the pattern. The other option, depending on what piece you're doing, and actually this is probably the easier way, is I'll trace it onto this, I'll cut that out, and then I'll trace it onto this, cut it out of the styrene, and then I'll have to bend it because this is like kind of a convex thing a little bit. So I'm going to have to bend it so that it will sit on top of this flush, and then use some CA glue, good strong modeling glue, and then clip it with some clips to hold it down until it dries. That's one of the longer parts of this kind of process, is drying the glue. I used some quick drying spray stuff, but it smelled terrible. It was making me feel woozy, so I just got rid of it because I was like, I'm not trying to sniff that while I'm doing this. So anyway, so that's what's next. The goal for this video is going to be to have this piece, these spoilers up here, the flap that goes in front of this tire, and then I want to try to build this out a little bit. I showed in the last video how the Tumbler has like more body work here. It would come out to probably this a little bit here. It'd come out to about there probably. We'll see. I mean, that kind of shape is really hard to make with this stuff because you're joining it with this really thin material. So building a 3D shape of that can be really difficult because there's not a lot for it to grab onto. Like it's really hard to glue two pieces of this together like this, you know? So we'll see if I can't come up with something else. I've got all of the scraps and pieces from this thing that I gutted. And so you never know. Sometimes there are pieces within that can be used for multiple purposes. So, and then I still have to sand these out. They're not too bad, but I just want it to be clean. So I'm going to do that. Yeah, thanks for joining me on this one. I really appreciate the support on the channel so far, as it's, in its infancy here. And I plan to keep bringing these videos for you all pretty consistently. So join me as I do some sped up footage to show you what I've got in the works. And yeah, I'll touch base when I've got more of that done. Okay, so in fooling around with the scraps some more from this thing, these pieces joined together like this, and this was I believe the top part. Yeah, this on the back here, this is where like it sort of approximated where the jet engine exhaust thing was. And so this piece on the tumbler here would click into these holes and clasp this thing shut. I cut these out obviously, but I was kind of, and you can see this was like where the wheel well used to be. So I was kind of messing with these and holding them up. Again, I mentioned this before, but a lot of this process is just like putting stuff in front of it, holding things into certain places and seeing if they fit. If I take this and kind of do that with it, that's a pretty good little build out thing. And a lot of the work is done for me, right? And I can attach stuff to it. Now, this might not actually be the angle. I take the other side here. I'll have to cut this piece off. But if you look at that actually kind of does what I want it to in a lot of ways. I'd have to mess with it, maybe try different angles for it. But, it's possible that I could get some mileage out of this thing, depending on how I do it. I may even cover it up. This may just act as like the bulk out piece I need. And I could actually run a screw into this from the other side and mount it pretty securely, and then use glue to kind of hold it in place, glue other strips onto it to help build that out. And that's pretty much the distance I'm after, and then I can add the little flap that would go like this. So I'm happy that I kept all these pieces, and I do think that if I kind of mess with it enough, I should be able to find a way to make it work. So yeah, I'm glad I didn't throw this stuff away. So I will check back in when I figure out more of this and show you where it's at. So right here what I'm doing is using some thin cardboard to kind of model the shapes that I want to get out of the styrene. Doing this first is a good way to kind of rough everything in and see what it's going to fit like before you start cutting into the plastic, because you have a limited supply of that stuff, and it's much less wasteful to do it this way. So I sort of tape it in place and kind of hold it there and see how it's all going to fit, and then I'll go back and cut more or trim some pieces, or make a larger one, whatever the situation calls for. Right here I'm taking the pieces that I mentioned earlier and kind of using double-sided tape to see if they stick, to kind of figure everything out. And then at this point I went in and actually screwed them into the body of the tumbler itself. Once I had them fixed in position, it was much easier to figure out the styrene and the cardboard and block in all the shapes that I was going to need. So once I have all the styrene cut, you can see me starting to put it in place here. But what I need to do is find a way to attach it. So what I did is I cut little tabs of styrene. As you can see me gluing it into this little kind of crevice here on this pop-out piece that I attached. And that just kind of gives it a tab to attach to from the other side. It was tricky to kind of get these in there because it's a small space and you have to hold the two pieces together for the glue to dry and adhere. So I was using tweezers and some clay modeling tools that I have just to try to get all the pieces to hold in place long enough to set. All right, taking a look at the progress we've made. By now you've seen the sped up footage of me assembling the styrene pieces here. The light kind of washed them out a little bit because they are white. So now we have a different angle and you can see a bit more of like the planes of the different areas on it. And I'm really happy with how this is turning out. I think it's really starting to take shape and it's really starting to resemble the tumbler more accurately. Look how much more built out that side is. Previously, it was all flush with this black section here, so it pretty much went straight back. Now it pops out. These pieces that I managed to salvage from the original toy that are acting as this kind of side piece. They're not totally accurate to the way the tumbler looks, but it really gave me a nice solid foundation and like a bump out to use. So I'm really happy with being able to do that because, part of my thing with doing this kind of work is trying to keep stuff from the trash bin. And, while I did gut this and there are a bunch of just scrap pieces that are, bound for the landfill, unfortunately, the larger toy in itself is getting a new life. And so anytime I'm able to use pieces like this that would have been part of that, that trash, I feel a lot better about it. So let's spin it around here so you can see the back. Now these fins, spoilers, what have you, are not connected yet. I just have them kind of sitting there with some tape because I'm eventually going to put little pieces underneath to make them kind of sit at different angles so they look a little bit more dynamic. This piece is pretty accurate to the way the tumbler looks. Like I copied the shape exactly as with this fin here. And these are actually pretty close. So all in all, again, this thing wasn't accurate to begin with. So I'm just trying to get as close as possible. And unless you have the actual tumbler memorized, like obviously you'll never know. So I haven't done the right side of it yet with this bit, but I have cut out the pieces. So, I've got them ready to go. And it's basically just repeating the same thing but on the other side in a mirror version of it. I'm not going to include that in the video because you already saw me do this part, so it's kind of pointless. So I plan to pick up in the next one where I'll have all of these bits put together and added on. I still need to do the little pieces in the front to cover up the seam there that I mentioned, so that'll be done before the next video as well. And then from that point, I think it's going to be ready for paint. Now, I have not connected this bottom piece that holds these tires and this top piece yet, like it's still independent, because I'm still trying to figure out the best way to kind of attach it. I think what I'll end up doing is making a styrene tab, kind of like this, and sticking it between the two, the bottom and the top on the inside, and then they'll each have something to attach to. And then I'll try to find a way to reinforce it, maybe with some screws. I've thought about magnets. I have a bunch of rare earth magnets, you know, those little like silver, I think neodymium they're called, or something to that effect. Here's all my magnets clumped together, but this kind, essentially. They almost look like little watch batteries. They're super strong. And so if I can find a place to stick them to where they'll work, then I'll do that. The problem is that when you glue them down, sometimes the magnet is so strong in bonding with the other magnet that it just pulls it right out of the glue. So that remains to be seen. But I feel like I've got this turbine jet engine piece pretty well squared away. It hasn't changed much from earlier in the video. I still have it just taped together, so I am going to glue that. And then I think once this thing is painted, it's really going to just look pretty dope. You know, one of my favorite parts of a project like this is when you get to take these disparate pieces that you cobbled together. I mean, a toilet cleaning bottle, the bottom of an egg carton, and you know, the spout of a coffee creamer bottle, and you stick them all together and you paint them, and then you have what approximates like the actual thing you're trying to build. That just is the coolest thing to me. So I'm really excited for that part. After that, what's going to remain are the air struts, the little shocks and whatnot. So there's two here, one larger one here somewhere, and then there are these sort of support pieces that kind of hold these up that connect to this panel that go to those. So I'm going to have to figure out how to make those. I think probably what I'll be using is, I have these pieces from an old car model that I've sort of just been rating as needed for different projects. And the framing pieces for all the little model pieces, you know, it's this nice kind of like tube shaped plastic. So I can take that, you know, work with some of these other little doodads and whatnot, and make the pieces that I need, I think. So, you know, the struts will be a mixture of wooden dowels and those plastic model pieces. The trouble with wooden dowels is that they absorb things really well. So like it's hard to glue them to stuff because the wood just absorbs that glue. So I'll probably have to make them, paint them, and then glue them on. I was thinking about putting just the raw wood and plastic and whatnot, attaching it to the tumbler, and then painting it all in one go, and then going in and doing the detailing after it's all been primered and hit with the flat black. The problem is, you know, if I'm painting little silver details like the chrome of the struts, then I, you know, stand a pretty good chance of getting it on the body of the tumbler, and then I got to touch that up and it's going to look kind of crappy. So the flip side is, if you attach them after everything is painted, if you don't do it right the first time, the glue can, you know, pull the paint up, and then you're sort of still left with like a sanding and painting situation. So it's going to be a very careful procedure moving forward, but I think I'll be able to manage. So, but yeah, I just wanted to give a rundown of what's been done here that you saw in the sped up footage. Here's Batman with it again. I love seeing this guy next to it, and you know, I think this does scale pretty perfectly. It's always kind of hard to tell in photos and video, but if I stand him next to it, let's take a ruler and we'll lay it flat so you can see where it connects with Batman. So yeah, the top is about at his shoulder, and that's, I think, pretty accurate. You know, I've seen a lot of photos of people standing next to the Tumbler in my research, and that's about right. I mean, you figure this is a pretty big vehicle, as it should be, right? It's, you know, It's like effectively a tank that can flatten cars and stuff. And also, I think if Batman were kind of seated in there, that would be just about right. So, yeah, I'm also going to be customizing this Batman a bit. I mean, it's like 90% of the way there, but the cape doesn't attach correctly. It goes underneath his cowl here, and so it creates this kind of gap right here. And so what I'd like to do is boil and pop the head off, reattach the cape so that it lines up with the bottom of these little triangles, which is where it does in the film. The other thing is his eyes are like in pretty big need of a repaint. This is a fantastic sculpt. I mean, the mouth is like dead on, but you can see the eyes have a lot of white around them, and so he just looks like kind of surprised the whole time. So I'd like to paint it to look more accurate, but yeah, other than that, I mean, this was a great figure. I think you can still find them pretty easily because I don't think they were super highly sought after. What do you guys think of the Bale bat suits? I'm not the biggest fan of them, to be honest. I like the Begins cowl the best, but I don't know. I just feel like this suit doesn't fit the aesthetic of the movie that it's in a way. I love the explanation of it. It's a Nomex survival suit. Bean counters didn't think a soldier's life was worth 300 grand. What's your interest in it, Mr. Wayne? Spelunking. So, I think that part's great. I think you've got this really techie looking suit, right? Which is dope, with these, League of Shadows gauntlets, which are a lot more sort of medieval looking. So that's kind of a weird juxtaposition, but, I'll buy it. But then the cowl is just kind of wonky. Like, it's just weird. And I think that, again, I think it's the best looking one compared to like the Dark Knight and Dark Knight Rises one. I think that one is just like, he kind of looks like a light bulb with points on it. The face or the mouth hole is too small in my opinion. So anyway, that's just my opinion. I don't think it hurts the movies. I still love them. What's your favorite on-screen Batman look? I think personally, I got to go with Batfleck just because it's like, it's what we know Batman to look like and what we've always kind of hoped he would look like on screen. I think specifically the tactical Justice League suit was really cool looking because it was more streamlined. And it reminds me a lot of the way they did Night Owl and Watchmen, which makes sense because it's both Zack Snyder. But let me know what your favorite on-screen Batman is look-wise, in the suit below in the comments. I'd love to hear your thoughts. So that'll wrap up part 3. I hope to have part 4 done in a week or so and up for you guys. And, I just want to thank everyone again for all of your support. This channel is growing very quickly, and I really, really appreciate it. It's been super fun to get into this stuff and finally kind of put it out there more for people just beyond my Instagram. And, you all have really just, the subscriptions and the comments and the questions and stuff. It's all been really wonderful, and I'm super grateful for it. So please keep them coming. I'm going to put a trailer for my new book out. As of this recording, it comes out tomorrow, April 26th in bookstores and April 27th in comic shops. It's called Retroactive, and I'll put a trailer for it at the end of this video as usual, so folks can check that out. And if you want to order a copy, you can go to your local comic shop, your bookstore, or go to retroactivecomic.com, and there's a link to buy it from Amazon and Barnes & Noble and other stuff. So thank you all again, and until next time, keep your head on swivel.